Welcome to our weekly 3-minute therapy podcast. With me, I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein, clinical psychologist, and my trusty and long-term co-host, Mick Berry. And we discuss behaviors and relationships and emotions related to REBT, rational emotive behavior therapy, a form of psychotherapy that Albert Ellis innovatively started in the 1950s. And the idea is that our emotions and behaviors don't come from situations, but rather they come from thinking about situations. And if you listen to people speak, they almost always say, I'm feeling stressed because, and then they tell you what happened or what might happen. Or I'm feeling depressed because, and then they talk about a situation. But after the because, they're missing the thinking that causes the emotion or the behavior. And that's what Mick and I focus on, the thinking, particularly irrational thinking that causes emotional disturbance, depression, anxiety, anger, and addictions. And we show you how to parse that, analyze that, and change your thinking so you change your emotions. Anything you'd like to add to that, Mick?
No, it sounds good to me.
Okay, and we're always looking for musts and shoulds and demands that cause these problems. And speaking of emotional problems, today we're going to be discussing envy and jealousy. And first, let's define it. It's my impression, but I might be off on this, so I'm interested in your feedback, Mick, that the difference between envy and jealousy is envy is about possessions. I must have what Mick has. Mick has a beautiful set of drums. I must have a beautiful set of drums. And because I don't, that shows I'm a loser. Whereas jealousy is about relationships. Mick has a beautiful wife. I don't have a beautiful wife. I should have a beautiful wife. And because I don't, I'm a loser. So that's what I see as a distinction. What do you think, Mick?
Well, I'm looking at the definitions here. I'm not even sure they need to be distinguished, although something could be learned by distinguishing them, I suppose. I do think jealousy tends to be in the romantic arena where somebody else's affection is for another person and you want this person to have affection towards you, so you're jealous of the person that they're affectionate towards. Uh, I mean, envy, if we want to get specific, it says a feeling of discontented or resentful longing aroused by else's possessions. And then jealousy is a sharp this says the state or feeling of being jealous, which helps us not in the least bit. Uh, so
That was envy?
oh, I've got here's some jealousy versus envy, but then there are all these websites just doing it. So let me see what else we can get here. I'll try to do it quickly. Jealous feeling or showing envy.
Yeah. So that sort of confirms what you said earlier, Mick, that there's not much use in trying to distinguish between the two. But
Well,
the
here,
point, yeah,
yeah, here's a question I have. Is there a use distinguishing between the two? I think there might be, in that you can see you're envious of somebody, like you said, somebody else's possessions rather than envious of their affection. Is that how you distinguish them?
yes, uh-huh.
Yeah. And so it could be useful to see that I have a tendency to be envious of somebody else's affection, but I don't care about what they possess. So then you could zero in on that particular self-defeating habit. So maybe distinguishing them that way.
Although
could
the
be.
main point is what causes the envy and jealousy, and that is, as I said earlier, it's our thinking. It's not Mick's beautiful car or beautiful wife that causes my envy and jealousy. It's my thinking about it,
Yeah,
and
it's
that,
definitely not my beautiful car or beautiful wife because I have neither.
yeah.
But it would be.
I didn't want to give that away.
What's that?
I didn't want to give that away, but yeah.
Well, but you make a good point though, because if you thought I had a beautiful car or a beautiful wife and you were jealous of me because of that, it wouldn't matter whether I had it or not. It's you thinking about it and then you thinking about your thinking that I must have this. I'm less. I can't be as happy without the beautiful car or beautiful wife. And this brings up something I've thought of later or lately. I've noticed a lot of people, friends of mine, get into relationships and they're still just as squirrely in their irrationality as they ever were before, which is something really important to remember. The way to get rid of your irrationality is to get rid of your irrationality. It is not to acquire the thing that you want. That will not get rid of your irrationality. That will probably provide more fun in your life and more enjoyment. But if you have a habit of being irrational, you can squelch all of the enjoyment that you would have by acquiring this thing that you want, such as success or fame or a beautiful car, or a beautiful wife or husband. But if you have a habit of thinking irrationally, you will not enjoy the thing that you sought out to get and then acquire,
Yeah, yeah.
or not
And
enjoy it as much as you could.
yeah, and when you say get rid of your irrationality, you mean more specifically get rid of your irrational thinking, and more specific than that, get rid of your demands. And some of the demands related to envy and jealousy uh, are I must have what others have, or it's not fair that he's rich and I'm poor, and life must be fair. I must do better than I'm doing in these areas of my life, and I must have what I lack. And sometimes that could include resentment. I resent that person because he has so much money, and that comes from a must also. And that is, you must not get what you don't deserve. Mick?
Well, I was going to say that one of the things that I do, because there are many people who are much more successful with what I'm trying to do than me, and there are many people that are more skilled than I am, but I try to remember and tell myself, no matter how much better off somebody else may be, I can still accept myself and I can still accept my life. And that I have control over right now. Not 100% control because I have a tendency to be irrational like most human beings. But as I practice, as Albert Ellis would say, practice, I get better at self acceptance. I get better at accepting the circumstances in my life, and I get better at accepting other people. And if I am self accepting, I might not be as happy as I would like. I might not be having as much fun as I would like, but I can at least be rid of the anxiety in my life created by thinking I have to have this. I don't have to have anything in order to accept myself. Unconditional self acceptance is readily available, and as we practice it, it is almost immediately available. If I find I have a thought of, oh my gosh, I'm less than this other person because I'm not succeeding as much, I am able to say I can accept myself regardless, and it can only take a matter of seconds. So we could have called your book 3 Second Therapy.
Yeah, Albert Ellis said the same thing once.
Yeah.
Um, and in terms of more reasonable thinking being readily available, thinking in terms of accepting yourself as the imperfect human you are, as you said earlier, Mick, it takes a lot of practice. So it's readily available if you practice, 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 at changing your thinking and a new way of thinking. And if you look at my book, 3 Minute Therapy, you'll see ways you can practice. There are a variety of ways you can practice changing your thinking. And if you do that, then you'll get significantly more rational over time and over much practice. Nick?
And I was going to say that, Albert Ellis does say that you demanding to have 100% rationality is the craziest thing you can do. But talking with Debbie Joffe Ellis, who was married to Albert Ellis when he was alive, I said to her, well, I don't think it's a good idea for me to try to be 100% rational. And she said, well, why not? And I said, well, she said, as long as you don't demand it, you can continually catch your irrational thoughts and correct them. And I said, isn't that being a little neurotic throughout the day to constantly correct my irrational thoughts? And she said, no, it's being mindful. And then I started doing it, noticing that I had countless opportunities to practice rational emotive behavior therapy, which, tell me what you think about this, but I think that that is something that a person who doesn't have strong tendencies towards self-defeating thoughts, but somebody who is able, excuse me, to live their life generally anxiety free, is gifted in being able to not demand things. And so this is something that somebody who has a natural tendency towards self-helping rather than self-defeating thoughts would be doing just in a natural, gifted way.
Yeah, I agree with that. But with most people, most imperfect humans, it takes continual practice. And Albert Ellis, who are you referring to, just to let the viewers know, is devised this therapy that Mick and I practice and advocate. And Albert Ellis, that's Ellis, has written over 80 books on the subject, so you can easily get some of his books and learn more about it, in addition to viewing our podcast, which I've gotten feedback from many people they found very, very helpful. Mick, do you have a final word here?
Well, I wanted to say that it's important to keep in mind, though it does take practice, practice, it is readily attainable, or readily attainable as you practice it more. But just because something takes a lot of practice doesn't mean that it can't be achieved. It can be achieved with great success. And not only that, as you practice it, people do find, oh my gosh, this really works. I want to do it some more. So there's big inspiration to practice it a great deal. Once you start doing it, you end up being inspired to do it more and more. That's what I've found. Now, we haven't talked a lot about envy or jealousy. We mainly talked about the dynamics of how to implement REBT, which is good. But I want to say that I have been hung up on, an infatuation with a particular woman that I was enamored with. And then I caught myself thinking, well, I am placing her on a pedestal. I am regarding her as more of an acceptable human being than me. And that's ridiculous. I don't care how sought after somebody is, how rich they are. If there is some woman or man that millions of people would love to be their partner, that doesn't mean that they are a more acceptable human being and they are worth any more fundamentally. They may be worth more in the sense that there are more people that want to be their partner, but that only matters in terms of the way that certain people think. Fundamentally, they are not worth any more than anyone else. I can accept myself with nobody else in my life as a romantic partner. I don't care who it is. Nobody can ever make me acceptable. I am acceptable no matter what. And this is something that applies to everybody. And we rate our behavior. I don't just say, well, I'm acceptable so I can do whatever I want, even if it harms other people. No, I am acceptable. And I also want to accept other people and accept the world. And if I want to live in a world that's enjoyable, I had best do all three. USA, unconditional self acceptance. UOA, unconditional other acceptance. ULA, unconditional life acceptance. Practice, 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 but it gets easier and easier and easier the more you do it.
Okay, thanks, Mick, for those eloquent words. And also, I'd like to thank Chris Bersini, our able tech engineer. Again, I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein. Comment below if you have thoughts about what we discussed. Give us a like and a thumbs up if you care to suggest subjects that you'd like us to discuss in the future. Volunteer if you'd like to be a guest to discuss the theory or practice on yourself of rational emotive behavior therapy. And subscribe to the 3-Minute Therapy podcast to do what, Mick?
To stay on the rational side of life.